I had to turn off the beautiful soundtrack I was listening to of Miles Davis because YouTube doesn't like copyrighted music in the background. So we'll just have to do without it. I'm going to make some pots today. My name is Dan Vito, and I'm at my studio, Fireborn Studios in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I finished this video, so I know what I'm going to do, but I didn't know when I got started. I was just going to make one particular vase, but I got all excited, so I made 3 different things and had a lot of fun doing it. Nothing I enjoy more than sitting down and listening to good music and making pots. This is the piece I'm going to make is one of my signature pieces, a piece that I really love to make, and I've been making it for a number of years. So I'm going to get going on it. This is 5 pounds of clay. This is 5 pounds of clay. The first thing that's going to happen is that I'm going to make 2 vases that are very similar. It's centered. And I've already made one. You saw a preview of the things I'm going to make at the beginning of this video. I'm going to pretty much play this thing straight through, but a couple of things. First of all, I should have cleaned off the bottom right-hand side of the mirror so you could see a little better. And like I said, I'm going to play it straight through. I'm going to try to cut as few little pieces as possible. Now, I don't do the same thing every time. So 5 pounds, it's fairly tall. Okay, so that's centering and opening in one move. Down, out, back in. Now, I'm going to squeeze it and use my pinky to make an indentation in the bottom. The inside diameter down there is about what I'm going to want the final piece to be. This is a vase. Okay, so this is my first pull, which is a little unorthodox. Okay. Now, I'm going to take this in probably 1.5 inches. I'm using my knuckle and I'm pushing down hard and in. And I need to make sure it's lubricated, so I've got the sponge right here to dump water as I go. Okay, so now I've got a significant indentation, and I came in from here to here. That's about 1.5 inches. And just so I'm not annoyed by this clay, I'm going to take that little bit off. Okay, so this time I'm going to, I think I'll do this on my next thing. Make sure it's lubricated, and this is going to make it grow. A couple of inches. So now we're up 10 inches. No, 9 inches. Okay. So now onto a more conventional pull, and I want it to be absolutely soaking wet. And when I did that, I probably pushed it down a little bit. Yeah, I pushed it down about an inch. Okay, now I'm digging under the bottom. And this is the stretching pull. I'm squeezing very hard, flaring the clay out over my knuckle, keeping it very wet as I come up. Backing off on the pressure here, because I don't want this area to get too thin. And the upper area I'm feeling right now, it's pretty thick right in the top inch or so. So I'm going to work on that a little bit. Just get that a little thinner. Okay, so now we're up at 11 inches, 10 and a half. Wet it again. Lots of water, because I'm not going to give this water a chance to soak in. Okay, I'm going to put a slight S curve in the bottom. It's going to have another S curve here, and I want it to have broad shoulders. I'm squeezing hard, pushing out from the inside, in from the outside. Pulling up. I'm going to stop and get some more lubrication. Okay, and continue on up. Into the basic shape. Now I'm going to refine that shape with a rib. So we're up to 11 inches. Now I'm going to push hard against the rib, sliding my finger up along the edge of the rib, and I'm going to leave behind the finished pot. Starting to sag a little bit up here, so I jumped up there to fix that up. Now back to this area. I want to get all these throwing lines out. And it is thin in this area, which is okay as long as it doesn't collapse. Okay, now I'm working on the form and getting at throwing lines, removing them. Okay, so that is looking pretty good. I've got a little bit of an S curve down there. My S curve up on the top. And the lip is thicker than it needs to be. So I'm going to see if I can raise this right here, pull the lip up a little bit, and just make it a little taller and a little thinner up on top. So I'm thinning the upper section, and I'm using this like a caliper. So thin that upper section. I'm using the webbing here to polish that up. Okay, now I'm doing kind of a reverse thing here, going in and down to get that curve, and I want to pull this up a little bit. And at this point, I'm going to switch to a metal rib to just kind of refine this whole curve. pull that up right there. Okay, and now I'm going to work on the flare and polish up the edge. And that's the basic shape. Now, to finish this up, I'm going to lift the bottom and leave a ring that flares. Okay, so that allows for some shadow into the piece, and I'm going to use this right angle here, put a spiral in. And clean up the burrs. Then I'm going to continue that spiral motif all the way up. But before that, I need to mop out the inside because I don't want to go back in there later. I want to be done. And there's 2 spongefuls of water down there in the bottom. Quite a little swamp. Okay, that's clean. I think I'll just wipe the whole inside to smooth it out a little bit because the inside has some pretty pronounced lines from my fingers. Okay. And now I'm gonna put the spiral all the way up with my finger. Like so. And lastly, I'm going to soften up the lip a little bit because I want this to have a kind of a soft quality. Okay, and that is kind of muting that a little bit. So it just is a little bit loose. So that's it. And final height, 11 inches. I should probably mention that the clay that I'm using is Standard Ceramics 257 Grollig Body, and it's pretty nice clay. And I guess I should also say that my name is Dan Vito. I'm at Fireborn Studios, and if you'd like to purchase some of my work, you can do so at danielvito.com, and you can visit my other website, fireborn.com, to learn more about me and my studio. So here are a few more. This is my second piece of the day. First one has more pronounced drawing lines, the one on the right. These I made yesterday. They're along the same lines. Some of those were 4.5 pounds. Some were 5. So I really like to make these pots, and if I make a bunch of them, in a day makes me feel good. That's what I like. Okay, so just for the heck of it, I'm going to make another one. Stick that down. Center of the bottom, center of the middle, center of the top. Cone, come down. Cone. Come down. Clay's feeling good, no problems. Final centering. Open. Back and forth on the bottom. Dig in with my right pinky. Okay, this time I'm gonna just use my knuckle and pull up. Now I need to keep this lubricated, so I need the sponge saturated, I need the inside really wet, and I need good lubrication under that bulge. Okay, now I'm just going to use this to finish. And the sponge is just lubricating. And here I'm just squeezing the upper section. Okay, so where are we? Help if I could see the numbers. Okay, that's a little over 7. Now I'm going to bring this bottom in. The inside is about this diameter. The outside is way out to there. It's, you know, like this much wider. I need to get all that clay in. So I press down, push in hard. Okay, I've got a bunch of it in. I'm pretty much down to the bat there. Just for reference, I'll take that inch of clay off. The bottom might have gotten a little narrower on the inside. And I'm pushing hard, squeezing. I'm pushing out and in at the same time to make it thinner. Okay, now I have an indentation here, and I'm going to get under that and I'm going to lift. And this has to stay nice and wet so I don't twist it off. Okay, so squeeze, push out from the inside. The bulge comes up the pot like a snake that ate a great big egg. And that's the bulge of the egg. And there's a corresponding outward thing going on the inside. Stay under that and lift and continue. Okay. And up a little more. And I don't want this to get too thin. Typically this is the area that I tend to get a little thinner than I want. And sometimes I get it too thin down here and the torque just rips it off the wheel. but I want to be able to have a significant shoulder, and if it's too thin here, there's not enough clay to stretch. And I want to get this thinner here because when I work on this, it's going to get weaker. So I need to get the top more in the ballpark thickness-wise. Okay, so now the upper part is about where I want it, at 12 inches. So I'm going to get down there and I'm going to feel what's going on, and I'm going to decide if I'm going to pull any more clay up or if I'm just going to start shaping this. And it feels pretty good. I'm just going to get a little more clay off the bottom. And essentially I'm just squeezing down there and then doing a little stretching pull, which is only going to go up a little bit to about there. And I'm going into the final curve. Now I'm going to take my rib. I could maybe do one more pull. Should I? There's always a risk. Okay, so that got it up a little bit, but you know, when you have a vase this tall, you put it someplace where there's a breeze that's liable to blow over, so it doesn't really hurt to have some weight in the bottom. Okay, so now I'm going to put the S curve on the bottom, push out, sliding against the rib, and come on up and get the outside profile. I'm flaring and lifting, and it can actually gain some height on that pull. Okay. Now, I want more volume in the shoulder, so I'm going to come down here and start bringing it out more. That's pretty good. I got a transition issue right here. That's better. The base is flowing into the bulge a little better. Okay, now that's nice and voluptuous, but from here up, I haven't done anything. So I need to clean up the rest of this curve and make it flow back in. And also the neck is a little bit skinny, so I'm just gonna flare it out a little bit. Okay, so now I'm working on the upper part. Okay, that's looking better. Now I'm going to work on the neck a little bit, and then I'm going to come back and clean everything up. And once again, this area is too darn thick, which means I need to make it taller. Okay, so I've got this section thinned out. And I'm going to take my metal rib and clean up this section. Got a little bit of a gouge in there from the rib. Unintentional. I'm trying to get that out. Okay, that's good. Got that to go away. Now I just need to clean this up. Polish up the lip with the webbing right here. I want the opening to be wide enough to hold a bunch of flowers. This is a pretty tall vase, and I need room. And you learn these things about your pots when you take them home and use them for a while. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now, I'm going to do the little flare on the bottom. I have the sponge against it, lift up that clay and push in. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to put in that little spiral I like down there. I pushed a little more vigorously this time because I thought the last one was a little bit weak. Now, I'm going to do my spiral, and I thought the other one was not strong enough, so I'll see if I can make this a little more clear. And now, this. And soften it up. Okay, so this one is overcompensating a bit too much. And that's the way it goes. You oscillate, you swing. What you don't like about the next one, you change, or the last one, you change on the next one. And I'm going to go for the happy medium next time. Okay, well, onto the table with the others. And I have some new bats. So I'm using a modified church key to pry the bat off the wheel. There's more to come, but if you like this video, please click the little like thing down below and subscribe. I'd appreciate that. Now, on to the next thing. So I think seeing more than one demonstration is useful. Just like I kind of modify what I do each time. To see it done different ways is useful. Because there's not just one way. And on to the next pot. 5 more pounds of clay. And what shall I make? Shall I make the same thing? Or shall I make something different? That's the question. Okay, well, just for the hell of it, I think I'll make a bowl. And the bowl I'm going to make is another piece that I frequently make and one of my favorite things to make. Center of the bottom, center of the top, push down, cone, push down. So this is 5 pounds of clay, and this should make something that when it's wet should be about, well, maybe a little bigger than 12. The bat's 12, the wheel's 14. So those are my guidelines. Okay, so I want the bottom thick enough so that when I trim this, I can have a foot. It flares back out. I should have cleaned this before. Okay, so in, leave the bottom thick, start coming out. So that bottom, because it's so thick, it eats up about a pound of clay right there. Okay, I'm gonna dig in, I'm gonna grab it here, and I'm gonna pull out toward my belly. And I'm gonna leave the lip nice and thick. And compress it and even make it get thicker. And dig in with my knuckle at the bottom. I'm rocking my shoulders back. You might be able to see in the mirror. I'm leaving that lip nice and thick. I'm coming up because the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten this out, and it's going to get wider when I flatten it. Okay, so this is the final shaping. I don't worry about the outside, I just worry about the inside. I'm taking off the throwing lines with a sponge. I'm supporting right there so that I can flare this. Okay, and like so. Okay. And the final curve is that. And the final diameter is 12. And sometimes I make a V groove in the lip, and sometimes I put a scar on the lip, and I'll do a V-groove on this one. So keep it from wiggling. I hold it there. I use the right angle. That's my V-groove. And what I do with that is I've got a gorgeous fluid glaze that I put in that V-groove. And what it does is it's a high boron glaze, and it does an oil spot, and it looks like a string of pearls encompassing the rim. One last tweak of the curve so that it really flows, and that's that. And that's another piece that I always feel good when I make a bunch of these. It's a beautiful piece. I'm going to delete a little footage here while I walk around, and then I'm going to come back and make a third piece, a fourth piece, a different piece than you saw before. I think you'll like it. I guess I'm feeling energetic here. I'm going to make another piece. This is another piece I make frequently. Another piece I really like. And this time, I'm going to use 10 pounds of clay. There's 10 pounds. The closer I get that to being centered right now, the easier it's going to be. Okay, so get the bottom centered. Get the middle centered. Get the top centered. Bring it down. And cone. And bring it down. And cone. And bring it down. And it's jumping around right down in there. So I'm just gonna try to ride it and get rid of that. Well, it's not as good as I'd like down there, but I think I can live with it. Sometimes things don't need to be perfect, they just need to be good enough. Okay, so I'm using my knuckle because this is so damn much clay. I'm feeling the bottom for thickness. Reference is the bat. And I can just kind of reach around there. My fingers are long enough. I can see that it's about that thick, which is thicker than it needs to be. I'm going to take it down a little more. And then come out. Okay, so the bottom is good. Now I need to start bringing this up because the piece is going to be this shape with a cylindrical collar and neck. So that's starting to get it up. And this is a lot of clay, so I'm going to work on the left side to start. Okay, that's pretty good. Now it's fairly thin here, and I need to be careful because when I flare this thing out, it's going to stretch and I don't want to run out of clay in that one spot. So now I'm just doing this, bringing up that donut of clay. Left hand is just lubricating, that's all. Now I'm assessing the wall thickness. It's a little thick right there, so I'm going to give it a little squeeze. A little thick right there. Give that a little squeeze. Okay, this is feeling pretty uniform. It's considerably thicker up here than it is down in that area. And the bottom, of course, is really thick. So I need to get my knuckle in there, push hard down and dig in. And I've come in about 1 inch. Okay, let's send the bottom a bit. We're going to do that again. Need more lubrication on the inside. Dig in hard and start to come up, squeezing really hard. And I'm underneath the bulge so it stretches. Okay, so we're at 12 inches. And bringing the bottom in more so the bottom gets narrower. Squeezing hard, getting under the bulge. Bringing that egg up through the snake. Okay. Now, I want to make this thing quite fat. But I may not have enough clay in here to do that. And I know when I get done, it's not going to have a whole lot of strength in this area for me to be manipulating the neck. So I better get the neck close to what I want, get it in the ballpark. So I'm thinning the neck. Neck isn't done, it's just prepped, thickness wise. Now I'm going to try to shape this thing. So starting at the bottom, I'm pushing out, and I'm going to get the rib against it. Up. I felt the twitch. So So down there at the bottom, there was a momentary torque and one of those things. And that means I need to be careful. But the good news is where I'm working seems to be thick enough. So that I'm not going to lose it up here. Okay, so this is kind of like that other piece shape-wise at this point. But what I'm looking for is a lot more bulge. So now I'm coming out more. Into a much more rounded shape. And I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm going to get more clay. Make it rounder yet. More spherical. So down at the bottom it flares out much more than the other one did. Now I need to pick up some clay here and come back in toward the neck. And the neck is not what I want. The neck is, first of all, it's a little wiggly, but not too bad. And down here, oh, that's pretty good. See, it's not really wiggling much down there. Okay, I want this neck to be a lot more cylindrical. I'm just mopping up water. Okay, so when I put pressure on this neck to bring it in and then up, it's going to result in some downward pressure on this whole thing. And I definitely don't want to collapse the whole pot. So this is closer to the diameter that I want for the neck. Now I need to very carefully straighten this out. And it's still thicker than it needs to be. But that's more along the lines of what I'm looking for. So I'm going to keep it nice and lubricated so there's no drag. Bring that in more. Clean up this last little bit. And I want a spiral on the neck, and I want the neck to be taller. And there's enough clay that I can do that. So I'm going to get it good and wet. Thin it and make it taller. And the question is, do I want this to be straight, out, in, or what? And I think I want it to be ever so slightly in. And here's my spiral. Okay, This piece is going to get trimmed. I'm going to put it in a chalk upside down and trim it. But I want to get off as much clay as I can down here so that it dries as uniformly as possible. So just going to rake off some clay. Looking at the inside diameter, and I can take off more. It's going to look pretty narrow foot on it when I'm done. When I'm done, it's going to be about an inch narrower than it is now. And I'll just be trimming from like there on down. You can see that in the mirror maybe. From about there down. I'll just trim that. And I think this curve looks pretty good. And I like the neck. I've got 10 of everything. Okay. So in comparison, that's what it looks like. My name is Dan Vito, and I am working here at Fireborn Studios. And if you would like to buy any of these lovely pots, you can go to my website at danielvito.com. You can also find out more about me and my studio at fireborn.com, which is my studio name. And I would love to sell you some pots. So now I'm going to trim some of the pots that I made yesterday. And this is thick enough on the bottom that I can have a raised foot. And this was 4 pounds and 12 inches wide when it was wet. And it's a little drier than I like them to be when I trim, but I'll manage. So I want the foot to be pretty small. So first thing is I kind of define the size of the foot. And then I use the corner of my tool to take off clay rapidly. I find the corner of the tool works a whole lot better than a flat edge for taking off lots of material quickly. And I don't use this very much unless I want to get rid of throwing lines. Okay. So this is a piece I'm familiar with. I know what I'm dealing with. I know how thick it is. And it's easy for me to trim. So this is nice and smooth down here. Now I'm going to make this have an outward curve. Double that edge just a tiny bit. I want this foot to be small so that it gives the piece a sense of lift and a nice presentation. pad right here because I may want to move this in, and that gives me the option of either removing more from the inside or removing more from the outside. And if you recall, when I made this, I said I left about an extra pound of clay on the bottom. Okay, so the question is, do I bring it in more or not? And I'm going to pick it up and feel it and see how heavy it is. And I think, based on what I'm feeling, that I can get a little more elevation on the foot, make a nicer presentation. So I'm cutting down deeper, taking off more clay. I can correspondingly go down a little deeper here. And then I think I'm going to thin it by removing clay from the inside as opposed to the outside. So that's working on the angle of the foot. And now I'm going to work on the inside. And if anything, I have a tendency, when I'm all done, to have the foot wider than I really think is ideal. So I have to be diligent about keeping the feet narrow enough to give the pot a sense of lift and ballerina up on toe attitude. I'm just going to shave a bit more off out here. Okay, well, I would say that's done. I'm just going to clean up the lip of the foot. There's a slight bump there, which I'll take off. Okay. So, that's the presentation I'm looking for. And it's a pretty good weight. I could actually have taken off just a little bit more. Okay, this next piece here was 5 pounds when I threw it. And it's bigger. So this actually comes out to the edge of the wheel. So that means that this piece is 14 inches in diameter. So an extra pound of clay got me 2 more inches. Okay, so now I need to check the weight on this, see how much clay I have here. Doesn't feel soft from that side. Okay, I made the bottom a little thinner on this one, so I can't make the foot as elevated as I would like. Too bad. Okay, so I'm going to trim. I'm trimming the inside before I go back to the outside because I don't want pressure to crush it later. Okay. So the inside is done. Well, it's done now. Now for the outside. Cut under there. Take it down a little deeper. Okay, I would say that's done. I would like this foot to be a little higher than this. It's not my ideal, but it's okay. And I have a little bump here. I'm just going to use this broader tool to deal with that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. This one's nice and light. It's a pretty shape on the outside, but a little more elevation on the foot would be nice. Okay. I'm going to give that an officially done. Okay. Okay, so I'm switching my feet because I'm going to trim that big one. If you recall that I said I was going to use a chuck to trim it. So I'm going to show you what that's going to look like. And here's the setup. And here's the chuck. It's hollow. I can have it right side up, upside down. There is no right side up, but I'm going to put it this way. And so here's the palm. What it looks like. Okay, so in it goes. Let's see if it's in the camera. Good. Okay. So while I was on the bat, I did take off some clay here. And I can see the diameter inside, so I know how much I can take off. And this was 10 pounds of clay, so there's plenty of clay here. I'm actually going to take off some clay in this area. And one of the things I do is I just score like this, so I have it's like treads on a tire. I know when those are gone how much clay I took off. So now I'm just going to take off clay and make those tire treads go away. Okay. And okay, I'm using a bigger tool now because I want a flowing curve, and a larger tool helps me get a flowing curve. This tool here is a custom-made one that I got from Kemper. It's a variation of a KSP3, I think, or a KSP4, but it has 2 square ends because I use the square end predominantly, and I would wear the square end out before the round end, so I just had to make me a bunch with 2 square ends. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I can pull the foot in a little more, and I can give it a little bit more of an S curve down here. And then a slight bevel, so there's a shadow. And I never hollow out the feet on these. I don't really see any practical reason to do so. It is thick enough that I could. But what I'm going for is a flowing line that extends from the base up to here. And for me, my descriptive thoughts on this are proud shoulders and voluptuous. So when I make pots, I have a bunch of anatomical words that I use to conceptualize what I'm doing. Anatomical and attitudinal. So I want my pots to have an attitude. Okay. These are the other 3 pots that I made yesterday, and I'm going to finish them. So that's what that one looks like. I think of the 3 of them, I like that one the best. The first one I made. First thing I'm going to do is just clean up the edge up here. Then I'm going to flip it over, and you can see the spiral I put on it. It tapers into nothing, and this is the bulge on the foot that I showed you here. Bulge and the undercut. So really all I need to do to finish this is sponge the bottom, go like that, and it's done. So this doesn't require any trimming. And this was 5 pounds of clay. And done. Okay, and here's this one. You can see its relation to the others. Okay, this is the smaller of the two bowls. I like this line on the outside. Okay, and then here's the ones I made the day before. And that same day, I made these. There's, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, about a dozen of them. And some have scars on the lips. And some have V-grooves, like that one, and a scar. And this one has, I think, a particularly nice foot, but there's an issue right there with the transition. Whereas this one has a nicer transition up in here, but the foot is not as nice as that one. So how do you get them perfect? That one looks pretty good. I think that one looks pretty good. And while we're at it, here's some tea bowls I made recently. They're squared off. Pile of them. So much fun. How can I stand it? That's, oh, these are more tea bowls of mine. Here's some tea bowls I made the other day. You get an excellent grip on that bulge. So I can have one pinky down there and 2 fingers on either side of that bulge. And it's a very pleasant piece to use. Here's some beer steins I made. Okay, that's one shape. Here's another. And yeah, I made lots of these. This is a great 2-finger handle. You can't quite get 3 in it, but it's really a comfortable handle. This isn't bisque yet. And I like this shape better than this shape. Preferred. Here's some tea bowls I made the other day. This one's squared off a bit. It's morning, and I like the morning light coming in the window. Now might be a good time to head over to danielvito.com and buy some pots. That's the end of this little adventure, and I'll catch you later.